Well, hey guys, how y'all doing tonight? Usually, I usually say that good morning is usually 7 o'clock in the morning, but no, today is 7 o'clock at night. We're actually doing a very special episode. Welcome to Voices from the Dirt Road. Today we're actually doing a special episode where we're talking about PFAS in Northwest Georgia. We have some outstanding guests that's going to be part of our panel tonight. We're going to have a great discussion, but we look forward to receiving your questions as we work our way through this conversation. What we're basically going to be focusing on is get a better understanding what is PFAS, what's happening here in Northwest Georgia. Then on top of that, what's happening at the state level, what could potentially be happening at the federal level, and then what are next steps. So I ask you, I'm welcoming you to the show. I'm very excited about having this show tonight. And as soon as the show is over, we'll make sure that it's posted everywhere. Please share it with your friends, because I think this is a discussion that is a generational type discussion. We got to get our hands around PFAS, and we got to get this thing figured out for our grandkids and grandkids and grandkids and grandkids and grandkids. So we got to get it done. We got to get it fixed. But just again, welcome you to the show. So with that, we're going to jump right in, because we're going to do a whole hour tonight, and I want to make sure that you have plenty of time to hear from my panel. So with that, we're going to move right into a quick video just to kind of bring everybody up to speed on, oh, I made a mistake. Welcome. Let me step back. As you know, this show is all about agriculture. It's about the rural community. And if you look at the stool there, we talk about row crops, we talk about forestry, we talk about livestock, and we talk about USDA. The reality, tonight's show is going to touch all of those things, because if your water is not clean, if your soil is not clean, if everything is contaminated, it completely affects our entire ecosystem. So tonight's episode is going to touch every bit of that stool. So because that is the case, this is 100% in our wheelhouse of Voices from the Dirt Road. And with that being said, now let's go into the video that gives you a primer for what we're actually going to be talking about tonight.
Dalton is known as the carpet capital of the world.
And at these carpet mills, there's a dyeing process where they put the color on the carpets. Well, when they do that, they also add chemicals. The PFAS was in these chemicals that provide stain resistance. So PFAS got into the water because when that washes off the carpets, it ended up going into the drains, to the local utility, and ultimately ending up in the river water.
Is that there were clear lines of accountability for this contamination, and a clear need to really understand why things are the way they are up in Northwest Georgia.
The carpet industry has long insisted it's not to blame for PFAS getting into the environment, and argued that chemical companies obscured the risks and assured them that the products they were supplying were safe. But the recently reviewed records also show that executives from the two largest carpet companies, Shaw and Mohawk, were getting warnings about potential harms dating back decades.
And into Alabama, we've estimated that there's approximately hundreds of thousands, 200,000+ people who get their drinking water from the surface waters that originate with the Conasauga River.
Today, there are lawsuits against both carpet and chemical companies. And uncertainty and feelings of betrayal are boiling across the region.
We pay for poison in our water.
Communities are worried about their drinking water, and local governments say the problem is too vast for them to fix alone.
It really is still a crisis that's not fully understood.
As you can see, this has been going on for quite some time. I want to take time out to introduce, bring my two guests to the panel. Can we bring up? We have Nick and Dan. How are y'all guys doing tonight?
Hey, General Harris. Thank you so much for having me. Hey, Dan.
Well, guys, this is awesome. I'm gonna give both of you. We'll go with Dan first, and we'll go with Nick. I want to give you about a minute or so to kind of let everybody know who you are, what you do for a living, and why it's so important to have you having this be part of this discussion tonight. Dan, you have the floor.
Hello, yeah, my name is Dan Lovinggood. I've been in environmental management, goodness, for 40 years thereabouts. Started out working in mining, went to graduate school, so you can't go anywhere and get your master's degree, so I did. And then I worked for oil and gas industry for Texaco for 6 years. And then I joined the EPA as a consultant to them for a year. And then I went to represent regulated industry. So I've been doing environmental management, environmental permitting for many years. So I've worked in all sorts of capacities. Right now, I'm the regional manager of environment, health, and safety for what is the largest scrap metal recycler in North America.
Excellent. And Dan, if I'm not mistaken, you actually live in the Dalton area.
I do. I was born and raised here. Left here when I was 19, so I never come back. I came back in 2011, and I'm happy I did. I love the place, and now I really want to help the place, help our home and our people here with this problem that we have.
Outstanding. And Dan, thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. We look forward to having an in-depth discussion. Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, General Harris. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Nick Jackson. I'm one of the attorneys with PFAS Georgia, which is a consortium of several different law firms from across the country that have formed in Northwest Georgia to combat this PFAS contamination issue that the area is experiencing head on. We have partnered with Erin Brockovich. She actually reached out to some of our partner law firms and helped bring us to Dalton in the fall of 2024. Since then, we have made what we feel like is incredible progress, not just from a litigation standpoint, which is obviously one of the main reasons that we're here, but also from an advocacy standpoint, just creating awareness of this issue. Since we came to town, Mohawk has now sued 3M for fraud as it relates to PFAS contamination. And Dalton Utilities actually sued 3M and the two largest corporate citizens of Dalton Utilities, Mohawk and Shaw. And, I'm from Columbus, Georgia, General Harris, and that is basically like Aflac suing the city of Columbus. It is unheard of. And for, the city of Dalton to take action like they did against Mohawk and Shaw, I think there's some pretty damning evidence, which was reflected in the intro video and a lot of other things as well. But pleasure to be here today. Been great getting to know all the people of Northwest Georgia and look forward to being here for many years to come.
Well, hey, I want to thank you to the panel also, and you bring a lot of great experience. You don't have to call me General Harris. You can just call me Sean. I'm retired now. But I used to be stationed down there in Columbus, Georgia. So I know a lot about Columbus, Georgia. And one thing I can say about Columbus, Georgia, no matter what you want to do, you go downtown Columbus, you definitely going to run into somebody from Fort Benning. Guaranteed.
It's the military town kid in me. I can't kick it. So the General Harris thing, you may just have to forgive me for the rest of the night.
All right. Well, hey guys, I'm glad that we got you on here because this is very important, very serious. Just to right off the bat, can one of y'all guys just kind of tell people, we say PFAS, but what does that actually stand for, so that the person and the conversation I want to have tonight is a conversation that not where we at the PhD level. I want to have it at a layman's terms so that just the everyday person in Northwest Georgia can now get a better understanding. Hey, when they say PFAS, what does that actually mean? And then on top of that, where are we currently at when it comes to this particular issue that we're talking about, when it comes to for what I would call a forever chemical.
Dan, do you want to take that?
Yeah. PFAS is an acronym for perfluoroalkyl substances, which covers a whole broad list of things: perfluorooctane, sulfonates and all these other things, but there's up to maybe 6,000, maybe 15,000 chemicals that are in this class. And these substances were used all the way back to the 1938, but to use to condition fabrics and to provide a waterproof nature to the fabric, ease to iron, ease to also non-stick surfaces, due to the unique nature of these molecules. I won't go into PhD level stuff, but think of carbon. We know what that element is, and we know what fluorine is, right? These things, what you have is these large molecules with lots of fluorines and lots of carbons. They don't break down. And so hence the moniker forever chemicals.
Okay. And so this has been going on in Northwest Georgia for a long time, but I think I just need to ask this question because it came to me earlier today. Is this just a Northwest Georgia issue? I see where some things are happening over in Alabama, but I hear people talk about Rome, Georgia, but does it actually go further than Rome, Georgia?
Yeah, yes. No, this is not a Northwest Georgia issue. Now, the problem in Northwest Georgia is very unique. One of only, a handful of places in the country that has a problem this severe, and that's because of the industry. And what I tell people is, once you have stain-resistant carpet, you have Scotchgard carpet, you don't then say, give me the stuff that stains easily, right? You're going to keep the stain-resistant carpet, and that's going to be what you're going to use, for the foreseeable future. And so in the late 80s, early 90s, stain-resistant carpet was taking off, and this chemical was used on a wide-scale basis in Northwest Georgia. So it's not a problem that is, just centric to this area. Sean, I believe you're from Blakely, Georgia, that area. I represent the city of Blakely in a class action for PFAS, right?
Wow.
There are, numerous cities across Georgia that also have similar issues, but largely is industry specific. So Northwest Georgia is just truly catastrophic with the levels of contamination. But it's not just a Dalton problem. It's not just a Rome problem, but because of the watershed in Northwest Georgia and how many people that it supplies, this problem goes all the way down the Coosa River Basin into the Gulf of Mexico. So it potentially could impact millions of lives along that route.
Wow. That's amazing,
about this just briefly about this river system. It's the most biologically diverse riverine system in all of North America, and one of the largest in the world in terms of uniqueness, in terms of biodiversity of species.
Yeah, that's amazing. Being from Blakely, Georgia, Early County, I had never even heard that we was having a PFAS issue. It was only here when I came to Northwest Georgia. So I think it's probably a lot of people don't even realize it's a problem because it's not talked about every day. Can you put that question back up there on the stage, please? Let's see here. We live in Polk County, good west south hospital. I guess the question is asking, do we have a problem here in Polk County?
It's very likely. I can't recall off the top of my head the extent of our testing in Polk County, but with it being just south of Floyd County, it's very likely. Another way that PFAS chemicals ended up into local water tables is through biosolids. And so although there may not be a local manufacturing facility that could be pointed to as an easy contamination source, biosolids or wastewater sludge that were taken all across the state and used for fertilizer and agriculture purposes. And so as a result, I mean, you're literally taking, PFAS from a single point and spreading it all across the city, all across counties of Northwest Georgia. And that is part of a national issue. And so it's very likely. I don't really know the testing numbers off the top of my head, but considering its geographic location, I would assume so.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the farmers. The Frontline documentary that y'all guys did was awesome across the board. But I did notice in that Frontline documentary, it talked about some farmers that had some chemicals or whatever it was sprayed on their pastures, and now everything is contaminated. Is that something that you're starting to see with many other farmers in the area? That's just up in the Dalton area.
No, that's something that was used on a wide scale basis across, the country, and it was an easy way to dispose of a waste product, and do so at a cheap cost for fertilizer for farmers, but also a different revenue stream for counties and municipalities. And so that was something that was very common across America. But what we saw eventually as time, carried on and testing continued to develop for PFAS, that the federal government, state government requires you to test a whole slew of chemicals in those biosolids, for iron, different types of metal compounds. PFAS was not one of them. And so people were literally dumping just toxic material onto their land, farmers were, and they had absolutely no idea. And so it was devastating to many farms. We represent farmers in Maine, dairy farmers that spread this material onto their pastures, and the cattle then ate it. And they had to literally euthanize their entire herd because the state of Maine came and shut them down because the levels of PFAS were so high in the milk. And I know you're a cattle rancher as well, General Harris, and my brother-in-law he has a farm outside of Auburn, Alabama, and they don't name their cattle because they end up being food, but dairy farms, my understanding, is a little bit different. They're more like pets, and so it was devastating to that family in more ways than one. But the most obvious being financially.
Yes, 100%. That would just destroy a farm. Hey, Dan, with your experience of working with the EPA, can you tell us, is the EPA doing anything about this currently, or what?
No, no. It seems to be their powers seem to be stripped back some. So the intended thing, correct me if I'm wrong there, but the intent was to reach the maximum contaminant level goal of 0, and lower to in parts per quadrillion instead of parts per trillion. So not really, no. So they reeled back a lot of the intended laws that were and new rules that were established during the Biden administration. Is what we're seeing, that the EPA administrator is reeling back these laws. So, when I first heard about this thing, I'll digress a minute, but this was, I was at Corps of Engineers permitting some industrial properties for my clients down in Sandersville. I guess I've got the notoriety or infamy or whatever of permitting the last coal-fired power plant in the United States. It never be built. It was Plant Washington. But what happened was I was coming back and I was listening to the radio back to Atlanta, and Georgia Public Radio had this documentary on PFAS, and I was just shocked. My jaw was dropping. It was about my hometown. I get back to my consulting firm. Then it was MacPac. Now it was the old law group. I said, went to the chief engineer's office, and I said, what is this PFAS thing? He said, close the door. So we've been representing Carpet and Rug Institute for many years to prevent this from being regulated chemicals. I was shocked. I'm still shocked. That conversation, and I wasn't bound to any confidentiality agreement at that regarding that, but that goes back to decades, obviously, of them, the carpet industry, knowing about this.
Well, so right now, if I understand what you're saying, the EPA is not really engaged at this point on what's currently happening on the ground in Dalton, Rome, and Northwest Georgia. Is that correct?
Nick, what would you say with that?
So the EPA is from a drinking water standpoint. And so there is a maximum contaminant limit for drinking water. Now it's 4 parts per trillion for drinking water only. That is something that almost, no city, municipality, county, can comply with in Northwest Georgia. It's virtually impossible for them to comply with that. You see a lot of lawsuits that have ensued because of that. The City of Rome lawsuit, which recovered hundreds of millions of dollars for the City of Rome so they could get a new drinking water system. That was actually before any of these contamination limits were in place.
Yes, I've read about that particular case. So they actually right now, if not to cut you off, I apologize, but if I got it right now, they're actually building that facility basically right downtown by the river there.
No, it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility. Andy Davis is the city attorney for the City of Rome, and he really did an incredible job on behalf of the citizens of Rome steering that litigation. But I will say the EPA has rolled back a lot of industrial restrictions on PFAS under the Trump administration. Now, the first Trump administration kind of set forth this initial drinking water contaminant limit, and then the Biden administration further restricted that. The drinking water limit has remained in place under the current Trump administration, but for industrial users, that some of those restrictions have been rolled back. And that is, concerning to us because that is ultimately the ways which PFAS makes its way to our drinking water.
So let me ask this, and we're not going to get in political this and that and all those kind of things because this conversation here is just strictly about getting information out to people. Should people have filters on their faucets and all those kind of things? I've seen that in other states. But are we doing any of that stuff here in Northwest Georgia when it comes to the water?
We absolutely, we recommend that people do put filters onto their faucets. You can also drink purified water. That is one way in which you can guarantee there's no PFAS because it's put through a reverse osmosis system. Being PFAS Georgia, on our Facebook page, we have actually put up filters before that we recommend for people that are concerned with it. But the important thing about a filter to remember is that they all have a certain lifespan. And so you have to remember to change that filter in order for it to remain, to keep being effective.
And I'm assuming these filters are not cheap.
The prices vary. But some whole home filters can run several $1,000s and up, depending on the size of the house, size of the family, water usage, etc.
Okay. And team, go ahead, Dan. I see you there. Go ahead.
So carbon filtration is quite effective on this. So it's reverse osmosis. But the thing about it gets to the whole thing about treating large quantities of water. Typically, aqueous phase carbon for treating water, what they would normally do they would regenerate it. So, and they would put it through it, steam it all the like the volatile contaminants out of it. But these substances, you can't do that. It sticks in there. So that's why these systems at municipalities are going to be quite expensive. Gas filtration system is extremely expensive. That's the first one that when installed. But that's why we're going to need a broad funding mechanism for this thing. It's like when I told Mr. Carpenter, I said, look, your bill is going to up in about 46 years of what's called strict joint and several liability. I'm not plain lawyer, but you know what I'm talking about, Nick. So I worked in Superfund for many years and worked for lawyers who took cases to the Supreme Court. And but this necessity is going to take some money.
Put that question back up
ourselves.
Yeah, put that question back up. Guys, can y'all see the question there? It says it's talking about, based on the lawsuits, should some money be coming back to the residents to help them pay for these filters?
So that's a great question and great timing, kind of piggyback off of what Dan was just saying. So there has already been a national class action for drinking water in America. And what that means is every drinking water utility in the United States has been covered by a lawsuit that was brought in the District of South Carolina federal court. That lawsuit settled against 3M for $12.5 billion. Okay. $12.5 billion to cover drinking water utilities across the country. Now, remember, I said earlier that Rome settled for a little over $200 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if a city the size of Rome, Georgia settles for $200 million to build a new drinking water facility, think about when you start throwing in, Houston, Texas, or Los Angeles or Chicago, that $12.5 billion is, no pun intended, a drop in the bucket, right?
Yeah.
And so it is going to take funding at the federal level, federal, state level, to really be able to bring all of these drinking water utilities up to speed. There are individual cases that can be brought, but generally, drinking water was covered by that class action in the District of South Carolina, and that settled 2 years ago.
That's great information. So to kind of go back to Rome. Rome seemed to have been leaning forward and got their lawsuit out there, won it or settled, and now everybody else is still kind of out there trying to figure out what they're doing, or is it additional lawsuits that are working their way through? Like, essentially, is anything happening for Dalton, or is anything happening at the state level?
Yeah, so Dalton and the state of Georgia, several states have filed PFAS lawsuits. The state of Georgia has not. But Dalton has filed a lawsuit against.
Wait. I want to make sure that I caught that right. I'm an old soldier, so my ears are not what they used to be. I think what I heard you say is that Dalton's doing something, Rome's done something, but the state of Georgia has not had a law put in a lawsuit.
That is correct. That is correct. And there are about 20, last count that I had, 27 states across the country have filed PFAS lawsuits, state of Georgia not being one of those. Dalton has filed a lawsuit against the chemical manufacturers and the carpet manufacturers to kind of remediate this issue. But Rome was the unique and very different from the rest of the pact in the sense that they filed, I believe, in 2017 or 2018. I can't remember off the top of my head, but almost a decade ago they filed their lawsuit. And just to put things into perspective, Dalton didn't file their lawsuit until late 2024. So Rome was much further ahead of the rest of the pack. And as a result, their drinking water facility is, like you said, being constructed as we speak.
Yeah, and I see the question here says we need a free way of testing the water. Hey, Dan, can you kind of add on to that question? But at the same time, Dan, can you kind of tell us, since you actually live in Dalton, what's kind of happening on the ground with the people? Are they concerned? What's the atmosphere up there?
Well, there's certainly some activist groups going on making protests and sort of thing. So the concern is certainly beginning to snowball, I would say, and also expand. And this is becoming a hot topic. And one of the discussion groups is on Facebook called Whitfield Watchmen. It's high on their list of worry, and it should be. It really should be. So because again, talking about the funding for this thing, the carpet companies can't pay for it alone. We can't pay for it alone. The city can't pay for it alone. So this whole thing of joint and several liability, I mean, it's going to have to take a village of people, of entities to pay for this.
Because it seems like right now everybody's pointing at each other, and nothing's actually really happening. I was up in Dalton the other day, and some people mentioned to me that a couple of things will happen at the State House. I don't know if I don't have those numbers in front of me. The state house number. Dan, do you know what I'm talking about? I think it's a something that's trying to work its way through the House that or the state house, state senate. I'm not sure that if it passes, then yes, it's right there on the screen now. If it passes, then I think a company can only be sued up to a particular amount. I'm not sure who wants to take that particular question.
Nick, you can take that.
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. There's two bills referenced in the question: House Bill 611 and 1212. 611 relates to wastewater treatment facilities and requiring municipalities to begin to document who their main industrial users are. 1212 is a bill that is far, far more concerning in the sense that it is a tax that is placed onto any recoveries for remediation of land from lawsuits, not just on the citizens of Northwest Georgia, but with the way the bill is currently written, on counties, municipalities, etc. So it is literally a tax on the taxpayers in certain situations. And it's really what we believe to be a gross overreach of anything, any type of legislation that would be helpful to solving this issue. HB 211 is another bill that was introduced last year. Our group and the city attorney from Rome, Andy Davis, we both went and testified against HB 211, the House Judiciary Committee. That is on YouTube. I invite everyone to go and look from at that hearing that was held last year. It was really telling to get to hear people's real experiences, what they have encountered in Northwest Georgia, and the story behind the involvement of carpet. But essentially what HB 211 would do is it would immunize the carpet manufacturers from any type of liability from PFAS contamination. And the carpet manufacturers are not innocent bystanders, right? I'm not saying that they are the only piece to this puzzle. The chemical manufacturers were definitely a part of this, but they are a big piece of this puzzle in Northwest Georgia, and they're a component of it. And as a result, is my belief. Now, obviously, I'm biased in this, and that I represent hundreds of people in Northwest Georgia, but I believe they should be held responsible for it. And so we do not believe HB 211. HB 1212, any bill that would constrain the rights of the citizens of Northwest Georgia are good bills that should be supported.
Okay. And I read something earlier today where it looked like right across the border in Alabama, seem like they're doing more for the everyday citizen on the ground. Is it a situation where when you cross the state lines, one citizen in Georgia could very well not be getting something, where versus if you lived in Alabama, get a completely different way of taking care of you as a everyday human being?
Well, it's possible, but there's so many factors that play into that. The legal system in Alabama is much, much tougher when it comes to being able to recover for PFAS.
Okay.
And so that is why we have always wanted to have this fight right here in Georgia and have our clients, who are all Georgia citizens, be able to have their claims heard by Georgia courts and Georgia juries. And so that's something that's always been very important to us. But from a legislative standpoint, things are continuing to develop rather quickly, not just in Georgia, but across the country, and Alabama being part of that as well.
Okay. And let's step back just for a quick second. We talked about the state, and I'm willing to go back and talk about the state some more. Is it anything that's happening at the federal level? Is Congress doing anything to address this?
So there is a bipartisan congressional committee that has been formed to investigate PFAS. But no real substantive action has been taken on the federal level. From an infrastructure standpoint, this is something that counties, municipalities are going to need help with. if they're going to ever come close to complying with that 4 parts per trillion maximum contamination limit. And 4 parts per trillion, just so easy point of reference, that's the equivalent of 4 grains of sand in a bathtub full of sand, right? It's not that much. And so it is very, very hard for most counties and municipalities to comply with that. From an agricultural standpoint, I referenced earlier the Maine situation. That's a real life story that members of our legal team have encountered. And so I believe as you start to, peel back the layers of the onion, there are going to be issue after issue that need to be addressed at the state, local, federal level, and as a consumer on an individual level. Importantly, we're starting to see some consumer goods now that have PFAS-free labels. And one way to get manufacturers to stop using PFAS is to stop buying goods with PFAS in it. And so there are small things that every person can do, but from a federal government standpoint, over the course of the next decade, 2 decades, and even 3 or 4, is probably going to require a lot of time, effort, and unfortunately money to fix this problem.
Yeah, and at the federal level, with the farm bill still being worked and it touching agriculture so much, that may be an area that we can put some things into to try to address this issue. We'll see how that plays out. I see the question there. It says military bases well around the Air Force. Yeah, I would tell you my experience with PFAS. I've seen it in Michigan. I've seen it in some other places. But specifically, when I think of PFAS, it was always on a military base, and it was connected to our firefighters. And that's why so many of our veterans that were firefighters actually have some kind of disability from an accident because they were putting PFAS on the fire. So, Dan, can you talk a little bit about that from a scientific point of view?
Yeah. So it's again, it's a good fire retardant material, and not only was it used for firefighting foam, like our aqueous film forming foam, sort of it was called, but it's also was also applied to flame retardant clothing. When I worked for Texaco, I worked on oil rigs. So as a geologist, I had my fireproof clothes, and those were saturated with PFAS so that you could identify the body at the funeral or whatever, but in case I've exploded. But again, that's what there have been tests on firefighters who wear flame retardant clothing, and they were able to, they believe it penetrated through the skin into their bloodstream. So
yeah, I clearly remember running around in Afghanistan on certain missions, and depending on what we was doing, we actually had uniforms on that were fire retardant, and you would sweat like I don't know what in that thing. And we'll just leave it at that. So you live and learn. We got another question there.
Will it become another Superfund sign? Well, Superfund is kind of diminished now, right? There's no fund going into it. But the whole, I don't want to speak out of turn, but the whole premise of Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, aka Superfund, was to ensure that the polluters pay. Right. So so the way the legal structure works is that they go after one person, one entity, or as many as they can, and they get together and fight it out. And who's going to what allocations this company A is going to pay, and this company B is going to pay. And then once they decide that, they go forward with it. Those company or entities that refuse to pay or be part of the group to fund the investigation and cleanup can get sued, and it would be what's called treble damages, in the sense that you can sue the entity that did not pay their fair share plus 3 times the cost of that. So it's essentially quadruple cost to that. So there's a lot of teeth in that those laws. Now that's I kind of hope it would go that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your opinion is of that, Nick, but I worked in Superfund many, many years, and for most companies like General Electric, in fact, large companies.
Yeah, I mean, I would say anything is possible. We believe that it is very unlikely that that's the direction that it would head, just because there's so much that's required, so much action on the federal level in order to now, get new Superfund sites. And that's what Dan was basically touching on. Superfunds basically do not exist in the modern world like they used to.
Okay.
And so it's very unlikely that Northwest Georgia, any component of Northwest Georgia, will end up becoming a Superfund site. But I've been wrong before, so it's possible.
Yeah, and I read somewhere earlier today, and I could be wrong, is that from Dalton to Rome, Georgia, not only is the PFAS, but illness of some different types of cancer runs rapid. Can either one of y'all guys talk on that, or is that just a nasty rumor out there?
No, Nick,
Dan, do you want to, touch on that, since you've lived in Dalton your whole life? I think.
Well, I actually didn't live in Dalton my whole life. I came back in 2011. I left, so I never come back when I was 19. So I'm 69 now. So you do the math.
Dan, you look good though. You look good.
So, no, I'm anecdotally, I mean, there are people talking these testicular cancer, thyroid effects, kidney effects. I mean, Nick, you'd be able to speak to that more than I could.
Yeah. So, we have had town hall after town hall, with Erin Brockovich on stage, and this is what, of course, made her a household name.
Mm-hmm.
And me being kind of ignorant of exactly the power of people coming together in a situation like this. Our first town hall, I stood next to her, shoulder to shoulder, and stood with her after to field questions, and we sat there for 3 hours in Chatsworth, Georgia, on a Friday night, where people came up time and time again. My 24-year-old son has testicular cancer. My daughter had a complete hysterectomy because she had uterine cancer at 23 years old. And oh, by the way, I had uterine cancer at 36 years old. Neither one of those two women had genetic markers. We have heard story after story about cancers, endocrine issues, fertility issues, neurological issues. This is truly, truly going to be a health crisis that our entire country has to face, because PFAS is so prevalent, obviously in Northwest Georgia, but also in so many consumer goods, like the fire retardant clothing. But it's also in McDonald's wrappers. It is in a lot of different places in consumer goods, and so it's made its way into the bloodstreams of a lot of Americans.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because I hate to say it, it's everywhere. We got another question there, guys. Can y'all see that question? I'm a little bit away from the screen there.
Yeah. It says, are the other dye stuff that the carpet manufacturers use and go into our water systems, are these safe or unsafe? So it depends. That's a lawyer answer to a tough question, but it's the truth. There are a lot of different dyes that have now been deemed safe to be put in to public water treatment facilities, and there are others that manufacturers still recommend for them to be captured by the manufacturers and disposed of in other means. PFAS was originally one of those. PFAS was originally made in Decatur, Alabama at a 3M manufacturing facility, and it made its way to Northwest Georgia, where it was widely used. 3M, several decades ago, recommended to the carpet manufacturers that they capture and kill PFAS on the warehouse floor. They obviously did not do that. So just because something should be done doesn't mean that it is being done.
Right.
But Dan, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that point?
Well, no. So some of those dyes, like acrolein dyes, or when those are are toxic. So I was looking up today the toxic release inventory for 2024, and so a lot of dyestuffs are listed of those in the toxic release inventories. So
so currently, the guys that are working in the carpet mills of carpet and flooring mills now, because they do other things more than carpet, do you think they still at some level of risk and they working inside those plants, or things got a lot safer?
I mean, I think they're still at some level of risk. Obviously this is a very harsh chemical, but it's not the only chemical that they're being exposed to in those manufacturing facilities. But it's also safe to say at one point that number one, carpet has in some ways been good for Northwest Georgia, and I'm not ignorant of that either, right? No. At one point, Dalton had the highest number of millionaires per capita of anywhere in the United States of America. That is something that city of Dalton, residents of Northwest Georgia should be proud of. But it shouldn't be done on the backs of other people that are just stepped on and neglected as well. And that's the important component of this. And so I'm sure people are still exposed to toxic chemicals in the carpet manufacturing process. The carpet manufacturers today largely claim that they no longer use PFAS in their manufacturing. But I'm sure there are other chemicals that they are exposed to as well.
Well, hey guys, we've been going for 47 minutes. Great conversation. I just want to ask the team behind us, is there any more questions that we got from the audience? Because we're going to close this thing out at 1 hour. That's what we all agreed to. But is there any more questions from our groups that's following us out there? Yeah, here go another question there.
What are we doing for our communities? Well, speaking for me, I represent several counties in Northwest Georgia, Gordon County, Murray County, Catoosa County, for their landfills. So that's a direct thing that I'm doing. But the indirect implications of what our group has done in PFAS Georgia is the thing that I'm most proud of, because this right here, having conversations like this, this is what the residents of Northwest Georgia can do to start to take a step in the right direction. It will take every single one of us the rest of our lives to fix this problem. But having tough conversations, that's the start. That's the beginning. And so I think, I'm proud to be a part of this conversation here tonight. I want to thank you both for taking the time, to invite me to come here. But that is one of the most important things that we can all be doing.
Yeah. Like I started to show off, I'm not sure because y'all guys here before we brought you on the stage, I talked about this was going to be a generational issue. And I even said the word grandkids. And I didn't say that by mistake, but I just kind of wanted to set the table for our audience tonight, is that we got to start getting our hands around this particular issue. And then when we get our hands around it, it's going to take several generations to clean this thing up and get it back right. I see we got another question there from Gary. Somewhere people can get it tested. How can you get things tested for free?
So they're starting to become blood tests that are widely available at national labs like Quest, LabCorp. Those do cost money. Emory, about $200, $300, per test. I'm not sure on how much of a wide scale basis or private insurance companies starting to pay for this. It would make sense for them to, because it would probably help diagnose a lot of the issues these people are having. But Emory University did do a selective number of testing in Northwest Georgia, and some of those results were revealed in the Frontline documentary and have been revealed otherwise. But I would look into Emory University to see if they're going to, if they are still conducting testing, or to see if they plan on doing additional testing in the future.
Yeah, I want our audience to know that I think we posted the Frontline documentary. If we didn't, we will post it as a standalone. I think everybody should probably go and look at that documentary. It's awesome. It gives you a very good baseline. As we now are pretty much 10 minutes out from the show ending, I want to spend this time talking about, what do you think? And I'm speaking to both of you guys. I don't care who goes first. What do you think our next step should be as we try to get our hands around this incredible issue that we're talking about tonight of PFAS?
Well, I think we're going to have more community involvement. We have to make certain the community is as educated on this matter as possible. And I think we're trying to do that. The groups I'm working with, Carmen Schuler for one, and the people with the FAM group. So that's happening, and it's growing. We've got to get attention, I think, for more of the media, which is happening, I think, too. I've seen Chattanooga Times Free Press and the television stations in Chattanooga are becoming more aware of this.
Yeah, and then I one of the takeaways that I have, and I'll go right to you in a second, Nick, but one of the takeaways that clicked in my mind is coming on to this conversation tonight. I thought in my own mind this was a Dalton Rome issue. No, this is truly a Northwest Georgia issue. This is a United States issue, but when you're talking about communities starting to have conversations, I think every county in what we consider Northwest Georgia, whatever that is, probably need to start talking with people like you, Dan and Nick, to say, okay, let's talk about Polk County. Let's talk about wherever, to get a baseline of what's currently going on. Is this an issue in our area or not? Because like our guest sent the question in, it was a very good question. I live right here in Polk County. I have no clue. None of those things came up when we actually bought our farm here. It was nothing in the closing where we even remotely said the word PFAS. So maybe some next steps need to be happening all across Northwest Georgia. Nick, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, I think the first step is advocacy on whatever that means for the individual that is advocating for this PFAS issue. It can mean going to a protest, which was assembled by citizens in Dalton against HB 211. And I had no knowledge of that until I saw it on Facebook, and I just what a cool thing for people to do, to speak out against what they feel like is something that is wrong. And starting with steps like that is obviously the first thing, but it's also going to take action at the state, federal, local level to make sure that we can or we are best equipped to combat this issue. But importantly, it's going to take action on the individual level of being an informed consumer, of trying to avoid PFAS when possible, and just having these informed discussions with our families so that everyone can be aware of this chemical, how harmful it is, and the health impacts that can come from it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And guys, I would tell you, when we decided to do this special tonight, I had no idea how much information that we would put out. It's just been incredible. I think in the future, it seems like we need to have a second one where we talk to the medical doctors. We talk to somebody else. I'm gonna be honest with you, because we're not trying to put any blame on anybody. I would love to have the companies come in one night and kind of tell their side of the story of how we got to where we are, because at the end of the day, until we can get the whole story out there. I'm not the lawyer guy, but until we get the whole story out there, it's going to be very hard for us to come up with a solution of how we get it done. I see one other question there. It talks about, I think, food and something else.
Foods grown in contaminated soil, are they safe? It depends. That's another lawyer answer, but in general, PFAS follows the protein chain. So, for example, most chemicals follow the carbohydrate chain. In plants, PFAS follows the protein chain, meaning you're generally not going to find high amounts of PFAS in potatoes, very starchy types of crops, or corn, but you will find PFAS in foods that are more dense in protein, like collards, for example, real leafy greens, but of course, poultry, cattle, those types of things.
Correct. And here in Northwest Georgia, when it comes to our agriculture, the top two is poultry and cattle. So this is definitely a conversation that we need to continue to have. We're getting close to just about 1 hour, but I don't want us to rush off. Let both of you, is it any last things that you want to say to the audience before we actually get off? Dan, I'll let you go first.
I do. Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is just briefly is remediation technologies. So I follow that fairly closely. I'm in some PFAS groups, but some of the engineering companies out there are developing some very unique things, very common sense things of using nano-sized particled carbon emulsions. For example, if the groundwater is flowing that's contaminated in a certain direction, of injecting this nanocarbon so it passes through basically a carbon filtration system within the earth. That's very exciting.
Wow.
Excellent. Nick, before I let you do your last piece, my neighbor just, everybody got my phone. Everybody got my phone number. My neighbor just sent me a thing and said, ask about Cartersville because Shaw has a plant right there. Does this thing, do you think it reaches all the way into Cartersville? And I imagine the answer to that is yes, because we don't know when we say Northwest Georgia doesn't follow political lines or whatever. So is you see anything go that way?
No, absolutely. And once again, I don't have testing directly from Cartersville. We have not expanded that far south in our outreach just yet. But I will say, anywhere there is a carpet manufacturing facility that used PFAS, and I'm not sure if that specific Shaw location did, it's very likely that the area around that manufacturing facility would be pretty highly contaminated. Now, remove the Shaw facility alone, there's probably some base level of contamination in Cartersville because of other industry there and other factors. But regardless, Shaw, no Shaw, it is likely that there's probably some base level of contamination in Cartersville.
Excellent. Now, Nick,
that basin said that the Etowah River is part of the Big Coosa Basin. We have the Conasauga that combines with the Coosawhatee, from the Usanala combines with the Etowah in Cartersville, and it combines over in Rome. So it's part of it. So if it's there, it's in the basin.
Yeah, and it sounds like as we go further into this conversation, this issue here is bigger than any of us really can imagine. It's going to really take everybody working together from the local, state, and federal to try to get our hands around it, because to fix it, it's going to be an incredible amount of money to actually just fix the issue. Nick, I want to let you close us out before I close the show.
Yeah, well, thank you both once again for having me. It's been a pleasure. Great to have discussions like this. But my law firm is on Benjamin Way in Dalton, PFAS, Georgia. We have several representatives, community outreach representatives that are out in the communities of Northwest Georgia every single day, trying to make connections with people to create awareness for this issue. But the most important thing that we can all do is just have conversations like this. So thank you so much, General Harris. I appreciate your time tonight. And thank you again, Dan.
All right, guys. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Nick. Let me go on and close the show off. Bring them down, and we'll go back to our normal show. So, guys, as you can see here tonight, great conversation. This issue is not going to be easy. It's not going to be something we're just going to snap our fingers and fix. I think we got to have a lot more conversation to get an understanding of what is PFAS. But on top of that, how do you fix it? Who is held responsible? And then how are we going to pay for all these things to actually get it fixed? I'm happy to see that Rome got out front and got some things done, but that still means many, many other communities got to get some things done. So, hey, somebody said to me, thank you, Sean. Hey, thank you too. Thank you. This is what this show is all about. It's all about rural America. It's all about being laser focused on what is happening in small town America. We want to make sure that small town America got a voice, and we're going to take this. We're just not going to do this show. We're going to we're going to put our hands to the plow. We're going to work on this thing because, this is about our kids and our grandkids. And like Nick and Dan has already told us, this is not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of work, and we got to get it done. So with that, hey guys, boy, I still got a lot of coffee left in this cup. Let me, it's going to be nasty. It's cold. All right. The cup is empty. See you on Friday. Have a good one.